Hello. Welcome back to Outlandish Claims, everyone. I'm here with Mike Edwards to talk about Tony La Russa and the what. Wait, no, I'm not. There was a trade announced a couple of days ago.
No hitters.
Trade was announced between Mike and Demetrius. Mike gave up the Tony La Russa stat and discussion because, as we just heard, Demetrius likes to talk to his soaps and shampoos about things and wanted to have that topic all for himself. So, Mike, you got what he was originally assigned, which was the no-hitters and their surge this season. Now, you took notes. I'm not going to presume to know what your notes are about. Incorporate them however you wish, but the general question is this. How the MLB decides to approach, is the way the MLB decides to approach no-hitters going to be considered in the long term as a good thing or as an overcorrection for a mistake that could have just been easily fixed?
Oh my, Fandango Poppy, you are the ultimate gamesman when it comes to setting your boys up. I feel like I was Blake Griffin with Chris Paul right there. Just that was amazing. That was beautiful. God bless this brother. Get him whatever he needs. We're on pace for more than 20 in this season, which would shatter the record of 7. That being said, I got to be honest with you. I'm not impressed. I mean, look at some of these names that have had these no-hitters. Miley, John Means, Spencer Turnbull most recently, Corey Kluber, Mad Bum. None of those guys at this current stage in their careers scream elite to you at all, right? Madison Bumgarner clearly is not the superstar anomaly that he once was, that was winning championships every other year with San Francisco. Corey Kluber's been about 5 years removed from that elite Cy Young caliber player that we once thought of him to be. You combine that with the fact that there's a .236 batting average overall across the MLB right now. The fact that strikeouts are on pace to outweigh hits, which is not the first time that has happened. It's been happening pretty frequently over the last couple of seasons. Also, along the lines, when you add in the quality in which the teams that are being no-hit actually are. Seattle, Texas, Cleveland, are any of those teams screaming elite right now to any of us? Probably not. That being said, I do not want to discredit the amazing pitching that's going on. It just feels like it's 2021 as an anomaly compared to, is this the new norm? And to answer your question about what it means for baseball, I think that you're going to have a lot of people begging for sweeping rule changes come 2022 and onward, similar to what we saw in the 60s when home runs were exploding, right? Similar to what we've seen time and time again, where offense is clearly the most dominant factor within the game. And you just have these adjustments, offense or defense, rather, should I say, on one side of the field. And you just see these corrections over time. So I don't know what those rule changes are going to be. I think that you'll probably see, and we've talked about this, things like shifts and designated hitters be reevaluated over time. It's just something to watch. I agree with you. I think it's probably inevitable that it's going to happen because the MLB is so focused on making the game fun again, whatever that means. And so people want to see home runs. The fact that a lot of these no-hitters are happening and they're happening at an accelerating pace does not do good for the visual aspect of the game, if that makes sense.
These sweeping rule changes that you talk about, we're not going to maybe we can get into it at some point down the road when it becomes inevitable what some of those options will be. But do you see them as an overcorrection, an overreaction, or something that makes a lot of sense? For example, rather than making all these different changes, why not just, for example, stop screwing with baseball in general. It was perfectly fine 5, 6, 7 years ago. My issue, and I'll just touch on this briefly before I turn it back to you on the question. The home run issue was not an issue. The launch angle was not an issue. The no-hitters, now we're entering, as Gio said, I believe last week, entering a new dead ball era. This was not an issue 5, 6, 7 years ago. What happened? The commissioner decided that instead of letting the players play the game, that he would intervene and make the rules more friendly and accessible for the fans, rather than what every other division, every other league has done. Let the players speak for themselves and do their thing and let that attract the fans. Only now do we have these people like Tatis, Machado, Bauer, let their personalities come out and attract the fans. And incorrectly, the little bit of Latin for you, so I made it a little nerdy here for this one. This would be a perfect example of the post hoc ergo propter hoc logical fallacy, which basically means because something happens after something, it basically means correlation is causation, which we all know is not the case. But that's what makes it a logical fallacy, because two things happen close together, you can argue, oh, it happened because of that. No. It did not happen because of these rule changes. In fact, you are pissing people off with all these rule changes. As we heard from Mr. Taylor a couple of weeks ago, talking about the second baseman rule, and me talking about the need for robo-umps because the regular umps can't do their jobs anymore, plain and simple. You want to protect the players, let the players do their jobs and regulate the regulators. Don't change the rules to regulate the players. Which brings me all around in a loop, right back to you, Mr. Edwards. Do you find, as I do, that it's an overcorrection, or do you think it is the natural progression of the sport because now that there has been interference, rather than go backwards and try to undo everything, the natural way of doing things is to just keep going forward and change as much as you can until you get back to some semblance of the original?
I think there's some validity to your second point, but I don't think that that's mandated by anything, you know? I think that I 100% agree that it's an overcorrection, because when you have these situations that really, to your point, haven't been situations, I have always been of the essence that the MLB didn't have a rules problem per se. They had an identity crisis and a marketing problem. Okay. The fact that Mike Trout is by far the best player that the sport has ever seen within the past 40 to 50 years, and yet he gets no shine out in LA, in Anaheim, is absolutely criminal. The fact that Jose Bautista gets criticized and chastised for a bat flip in a playoff series against a division rival, nonetheless. What is it that we're talking about here, right? You're making changes like adding guys to second base in the extra innings just over this false perception that you needed to change what you were doing to keep people interested. No, you needed to attract new people. You needed to reel in, and you need to reel in those audiences that you've ostracized and basically left to the side. But now you want them because the MLB and the NFL have them. That's the reality of the situation when it comes to Major League Baseball. And I think that they've made certain strides that address that, right? I think that you see them doing a better job with some of the sponsorships that their major league players definitely like work through and secure. You see a lot of that with the Mets and the work that they do with Citi Field. So there's ways to do it. It's just identifying the audience that you want to go after and catering the content towards them. But that doesn't mean you have to rob the players of what was already working, right? You don't see the NBA adding a 4-point line just because fans want it. And that's something that Gio and I have been very vocal against, right? Something like that compared to an extra point adjustment in football is a completely different set of circumstances, because you can make the argument, okay, the extra point is literally a gimme. Let's make it a little bit more challenging, right? That's different than adopting rules that favor offense in a certain way that hurts your pitchers, because when you do things, to your point, that hurt one side of the aisle, you're then hurting the other side of it. So you're hurting your closers by putting people on base. Makes no sense. I think that you're going to see an overcorrection here too. I honestly do. Whether it's like an adjustment to the mound, something to do with the baseballs. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't even want to think of it, because MLB has this thing where they just get these things out of there and then think they're a good idea, except for the National League DH. We all agree there.
Sounds like we're in agreement, and that sounds like a really good place to wrap up the discussion, unless you have other stats you want to share with us. I want all your stats used, all your notes used, Mike. So if you got notes you didn't use yet, use them up, buddy. Yeah,
I mean, listen, I think that I pretty much covered all of the stats that I needed to. I think the only thing that I would say is that, I'm here. I came straight off the plane from Miami. I'm here. I'm Tanner. I'm dark. I'm golden brown. I'm happy. I'm tired, but I'm saucy. And so with that being said, I'm going to pass it back to my good friend, Adam McPartland, to close us out, because at the end of the day, like, that's the way, and that's the way we're going to keep it.
That will do it for our show today. We'll be back tomorrow with fun but kind of depressing talk about everybody who's hurt, everybody who's coming back. So there's a little bit of hope there. I'll see you then.